Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Last Edit Film Podcast, a podcast on film starring yours truly, Silver Hawkins, and my wonderful friend.
Citizen Sleeve, hello there.
Now, as you may know if you've listened to this podcast before, we take a film every week and discuss it. Usually, we tend to gravitate towards more unknown or obscure films, to sort of try and highlight them and bring some attention to them that they don't tend to get. And this week I've chosen one of my all-time favorites, a movie that had a very profound effect on me when I was a child and grew up, and that's Alan Parker's 1970s musical Bugsy Malone, which is a musical film with a cast consisting entirely of children, about 200 child actors. And they're all playing the parts of adults. So they're like dancers, singers, gangsters, bartenders, all kinds of things. And it works. As ridiculous as the concept is, and as ridiculous as the movie is in places, it kind of works. So the brief summary is the movie takes place in Prohibition America. I don't recall that this a specific city is named, but there's a brewing gang war between the gangs of Fat Sam and Dandy Dan. And Dandy Dan has the upper edge because he's just gotten his hands on an all-new weapon, the Splurge gun, which has the technical superiority to the old weapons, and he's starting to encroach on Fat Sam's territory. And that's basically where the movie sort of begins. And then the main character of Bugsy Malone sort of gets caught in the middle of the gang war. So you mentioned you'd seen it as well as a kid. What did you think upon rewatching it?
Well, it's really interesting because I remember this. I don't think I've seen it for about 25 years. I don't think I've seen it since I was at least 15 or younger. And when it first came out, I was like you, I was blown away by it. You know, this big gangster epic that's supposed to have adults in it, but everyone was kids.
Yeah,
And I think initially what sold me when I was a kid was I need those cars. I need to
yeah,
pedal my own gangster car. That looks amazing. But rewatching it now, most of it holds up really well, I have to say. It's an interesting departure for Alan Parker as a director because Midnight Express, The Commitments, etc. Great films, but this is really quite unique,
yeah,
and it just works. I think. I mean, we talked before the podcast a little bit. First of all, about kind of the set design, the props, the whole atmosphere and ambience of what they've managed to capture, just visually on screen. The costume design,
yeah,
it's all absolutely spot on for kind of 1920s, early 30s,
yeah,
Prohibition America. It's absolutely brilliant. I think the kids are outstanding. The performances are really, really cool. I think you could see Jodie Foster's just that little bit above everybody else. Just in
yeah.
the scene she's in, because she is so good an actress, even at that age. You know, this is a time when I think she'd already or was about to do Taxi Driver,
She already
already
had
done it.
done Taxi
Yeah.
Driver, I think. Yeah,
So at that point, she was already a highly thought of actress. But the character actors around her, I thought were great. Little shout out to Dexter Fletcher as Babyface, who would go on to star in Press Gang and Lock,
yeah,
Stock and stuff. It just this warm role as this kid who we only see
yeah.
briefly, but he's really really funny.
Babyface. Wait, I'm Babyface. Yeah,
I'm Babyface. What am I doing? And they pass him the bat down.
yeah,
Brilliant. But yeah, the performances are great. I think Fat
John
Sam and Dandy
Cassisi. Yeah,
Dan. Yeah, and
yeah.
they're
And Martin Lev. Yeah, those were two
yeah.
of my favorite performances in the film as well. Yeah,
They're the
there's
perfect roles as well. You
yeah,
know that this whole film is about kind of spoofing and parodying the tropes and the archetypes of what you'd expect in a classic gangster film. It almost reminds me of Home Alone in a weird way. Just that playful feeling of those kind of themes, but on a grander scale, a much grander scale. Uh, I think Blousy's really funny. The more stoic, independent woman who wants her own way and kind of ensnares Bugsy's feelings for her. And then obviously Jodie Foster's Tallulah, who's the archetypal gangster's mole,
yeah,
Fat Sam's mole. And the way they all play off each other is brilliant. What really I like about this film is that it treats itself semi-seriously at
yeah,
times, just semi-seriously, and then it'll go absolutely kid crazy. especially culminating in the end, which we'll get to a bit later. But just little moments. There's a bit later in the film when Bugsy is trying to round up gang members, and he's in the soup kitchen, I think, and they do that song and dance number. And afterwards, they're trying to get these new weapons. And Leroy, who's this kid who helped him when he was beaten up on the street, just starts putting hay on his face and pretending to be Tallulah.
Yeah.
It descends into that little bit of silliness every now and again, which is what you'd expect a kid to be like.
Yeah.
And fourth wall breaking as well. It doesn't take itself at all seriously, but those little moments highlight the way that it's such a cool kids movie. Having fun. Reminds me of the Lost Boys in Hook, for instance. You know, that real playful innocence, but with something that's supposedly more adult, which I think was great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's genuinely fun with a capital F.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there are several, like, fourth wall breaking moments. Like, at one point, Fat Sam speaks Italian to his main henchman, Knuckles, who's a Jewish gangster and doesn't understand him. And so Fat Sam tells him, no, just read the subtitles then. And he looks down and he sees the subtitles for what Fat Sam just said. And yeah, I mean, John Cassisi's worth mentioning as sort of the stand, and along with Jodie Foster as sort of the standout performance of the film, I think, because he really carries it. Like, he has enormous charisma and presence as the gang boss. And he's sort of the scrappy underdog to Dandy Dan's sort of really stylish, suave, elegant gangster. Like, he lives in the $1 million mansion. Like, is an equestrian. Probably plays polo. Yeah, and Fat Sam is just there in his living in the back of a speakeasy. Yeah, but of course we can't forget the fact that it's a musical, and a musical lives and dies by its music. And consistently, I think a lot of the songs in the film are pretty great and memorable. Like, I mean, it's another really funny sort of fourth wall breaker is the change in voice for the kids. When you have this, like, especially for like Scott Baio, whose voice hasn't really fully emerged yet.
Hasn't broken yet properly.
Yeah, from puberty. And then you get that Down and Out song, which is a huge change. Or with Tallulah, right? My name is Tallulah. And I think actually the joke that Leroy makes was an out of character moment that they just did and kept in the film.
Oh, nice.
Because all the kids would constantly sort of tease Jodie for the My Name is Tallulah performance and sort of impersonate her.
That's nice, though, that those little kind of ad-libbed or spontaneous moments are kept in, because, again, it's very kid-like. It's what it's supposed to be. And you're right, I think most of the musical numbers work brilliantly still. Especially the most primary ones and the ones that kind of run throughout. The only one that fell a little bit flat for me after so much time was the Four Henchmen, the bad guy song in the street. Didn't quite work for me, that one. I don't know whether it was just the tone maybe didn't quite suit what I thought that moment should be. A bit more gangstery, it sounded a little bit different than the rest. But the rest of the performances I thought were absolutely brilliant. And as you mentioned prior to the podcast, the choreography. We're talking about kids.
Yeah.
And yes, now in 2019, it might be easy to turn on Britain's Got Talent or America's Got Talent and see, kids dive bombing around the stage in complex choreography. But it wasn't back then, and these are actors. These aren't for the most part, these aren't singing, dancing performers. These are acting kids. So especially the chorus line and just the choreography of the movement around the sets is really, really well timed and well done. Just wanted to mention as well, Fat Sam. I think he's probably the funniest character in the film, and one of the funniest things is he keeps telling everybody with a nickname off to stop doing the thing that made him have that nickname.
Yeah.
So the obvious one is Knuckles.
Yeah.
He cracks his knuckles. Just cracks his knuckles. Every time he does it, Sam goes absolutely mental. Stop doing that, man! Stop it! Or change your name, and then Snake Eyes as well.
Yeah, with the dice.
Just that's his point of being, to roll the dice. Stop doing that. Just absolutely brilliant. Always shutting them down before they have the opportunity to fulfill.
I love that scene where he goes to demonstrate why they're being one-upped by Dandy Dan, with Louis Kid in the corner. Me, boss?
Yeah.
And he goes into the corner, and then Fat Sam throws the pie, and pie, of course, is the outdated weapon that used to be the main weapon of gang warfare, which has now been uh, out- outdone by Dandy Dan's basically sort of a Tommy gun, the splurge gun, which is sort of a Tommy gun version that
The whipped
a
cream
Tommy gun
sprayer,
that shoots
yeah.
whipped cream, or custard.
It's such a clever way of bringing it back to the kids' level, that, and the little
Yeah,
nods to it as well. Like about 2/3 through the film, Sam is sat looking at his pies and going, "We need better hardware, man." You know, as if it's hardware, as if it's actually guns. We need some
yeah.
better weapons for this kind of deal. Brilliant. All these little asides, they're so funny, and they work really, really well to just keep the pace maintained, and the comedy flows quite naturally.
And
Which
also
is great.
because, as you say, the film takes itself seriously, even despite how preposterous it is. Because even though it is just custard, characters still die.
Yeah,
Like Fat Sam's people are still killed.
poor Knuckles,
Yeah, I mean, I was almost devastated by
plastered
that.
on the floor.
I was devastated by that scene when, like, the moment when Fat Sam in his like complete desperation and anguish goes over to the cardboard cutout of Dandy Dan, just sort of and shakes it because now he's lost everything when Knuckles dies as sort of his final guy. Yeah, that really devastated me as a kid. That scene, regardless of how silly it really is, because the stakes are real. Even though they're
and when you're a
shooting
kid,
custard.
you're bought into it. Aren't
Yes,
you?
completely.
As a kid, you don't overthink it. There's
No,
no
precisely.
over consciousness there, and you just get involved, which I think
And
is
there's
great.
still a lot of these scenes are still filled with tension and are built
Yeah.
with tension. Like there's a scene where Danny Dan carries out a hit at a barber shop on one of Fat Sam's guys who's getting a shave, and it just shows outside. There's Dandy Dan's hitman. Dandy Dan pulls up in his car, gives him the splurge gun in a case, tells him you know what to do, and then Dandy Dan drives off. The hitman goes to the barber shop, locks eyes with the barber, who then swivels the chair around so that the target faces the hitman, and the hitman then shoots him with the splurge gun, which is a really, really well made scene and really well constructed in terms of tension.
Well, it evokes classic gangster scenarios
Yes.
and sequences in terms of shot development. That in itself, a classic barbershop. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times have we seen that in a 1930s or 40s gangster film? You know, and the shot selection is very much as it would have been structured back in one of those early movies, which really, really makes the film feel authentic, even though it's so silly.
Yeah. And I mean, another of my favorite scenes is the car chase with Dandy Dan chasing after Fat Sam and Bugsy Malone, where they pedal constantly, and Fat Sam is just sort of looking out from the back of the car. You dirty rat, Dandy Dan! As they're chasing him.
I love the fact they're peddling. It just brings a whole new level of. It's almost like Monty Python, the Holy Grail at the start, bagging the coconuts. You know, it's that level of silly, which is
Yeah,
great.
and then they crash to the barn with all the chickens and stuff. Yeah.
That's the moment, and then it follows on to another bit which kind of solidifies it. But that's the moment where the film almost become beyond slapstick, like a silent movie, because that's exactly what you'd see in a silent movie: car
Yes.
driving through a barn, the
Yeah.
chickens, feathers sticking, and then we get that little dream sequence that
From Blousy, yeah.
Blousy has, yeah, and that shot as her dreaming about being a silent movie star. So I love that little combination in there as well.
Yeah.
And you can see how Parker's looked at both, understands both styles, understands the classics of the genre, and can take them and reconstruct them in this kind of really, really imaginative environment. It's great. It really is great.
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I mean, it has its flaws. It has its plot holes, but I don't care. This movie had a profound effect on me as a kid. Like, as you said, you're completely jealous as a kid when you watch it as a kid of like the pedal cars. You want a pedal car. It's like seeing like the ultimate toy advertisement on TV, and just pestering your parents. I want that.
Well, it's what you wanted to be as a kid, isn't it? You wanted to be, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a gangster or a ninja or a pirate. They were the things.
Yeah.
They were just the things. And we would play gangsters all the time, you know? The classic tropes and kind of archetypes of the gangster story, you know?
And then all of a sudden, here was this movie where it wasn't just make-believe. It was actually kids doing this stuff that you'd always dreamed of doing. And it's just, I mean, I think it's one of the best kids movies ever made.
I think no part of it says more than that, except for the very end. No, that
Yeah,
really is the epitome of all of this really great use of kind of genre tropes and archetypes and silliness built on top. The fact that you've got they obviously first of all the close-ups they called every kid over and one in a row went really close up. But what you really see when you with the long shot is the anarchy of the kids enjoying themselves.
yeah.
Parker just
Parker said that
just went go for it.
yeah,
Yeah,
he said it took them about 2 seconds to just thrash the entire set after he'd said action. Like the
brilliant, man.
entire set was gone 2 seconds after.
That's brilliant. Just let kids go at it and have
Yeah.
a pie fight. It's brilliant. And that culmination, I think, is a really great way to send off the viewers in such a wonderful mood because it takes you back to being a kid again.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
mean it's also kind of weird because it's maybe the only movie that has so much death in it, and like yet it leaves you so happy at the end. Like, I mean, a reading of the ending is that they all die because
yeah,
I
basically.
mean they all get shot and plastered with the stuff that's killed people throughout the film, and yet they just burst out into song and dance and this really wonderful message of no, friendship actually matters. We need to pull together rather than divide ourselves.
Yeah, and they all get on in the end. They shake each other's hand. There's even that
Yeah.
one bit just before it trails off to the proper end with the like the Padre kid separating the two gangsters who are about to pie each other again. It's like no. Put the pies down. Put the pies down. It's just it evokes so many cool memories. I mean, I think that's why the food fight in Hook particularly, or something like Annie. You know, they're the films that really kind of fit this mold. This beautiful use of children to explore fantasy and pretend. And I think that's what you spoke. That's why the suspension of disbelief remains and doesn't get broken because as a kid you believe it, as an adult you know it's make believe. And so having them at the end, having a little party and enjoy themselves, it just works. It really kind of ties the film up nicely and leaves you with a good feeling afterwards.
I think it helps the film that it never comes off as insincere. It always comes off as being sincere.
Yeah,
And that is really sort of driven home by the poignancy of the ending with the song. And I think that might be the best song of the entire film.
yeah, I'd agree. I think that's a great culmination. I think what it has is a sincerity. It's
Yeah.
not cynical.
Yeah.
There's no part of any aspect of the film which has cynicism, and you don't get that always in modern kids movies because they are marketing tools. They're driven for money, all the rest of it. This wasn't made for that. This was made because Alan Parker had a great idea and he thought it'd be an absolute blinding concept to have kids in there and inhabit this world and see how they played with it as opposed to adults. It's very rare you get that opportunity anymore in direction or have that kind of creative idea and be able to pull it all together. Just really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of just doing this film is completely crazy. I mean, this is a film that would not get made today, but it is also a film that wouldn't get made in the 1970s, but it got made.
No. Yeah. Yeah, really, really unique. And the fact all of these disparate parts come together.
Yeah.
This really professional costume design and set dressing, the kids themselves notoriously difficult to work with, like animals. The dance routines, the music. Every part makes this wonderful whole, and it shouldn't really be a thing, but it just exists as this wildly unique take on the gangster genre. Like if anyone's really interested in gangster films, you can't go wrong showing this to your kids or just enjoying it yourself because it is a gangster film. It's just one which is more uplifting than most others that you'll see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were also a couple of lines that I caught this time that I had missed in their adult connotations when I was younger. Like one of them is in the dancers' dressing room where one of the dancers is sort of getting mocked by the others. And I think she goes something like, you're just saying that because I've actually grown into my lips or something.
There's a few nods here and there, isn't
there? There are. And obviously the subtitle one as well. But yeah, it's the movie sort of goes back and forth in tone throughout, but it just remains consistently charming.
Yeah. Well, think about the I don't know the character's name, but the kid who wants to tap dance, and Fat Sam just keeps saying, "Not
Yeah,
now,
Fizzy.
not now, tomorrow. I haven't got the time." Yeah,
Yeah,
he's so cool.
yeah,
The that little bit where Tallulah's coming out and Velma has to go back for her purse, and she sees him,
yeah,
and they have that routine together. That's really cool as well. Just these
yeah.
little
That's an amazing scene. The way where she
amazing
dances to the
song,
song. Yeah,
beautifully lit as well. It
yeah,
just again, it's just a little scene that epitomizes the heart of the film, and that's what this film has got. Just a load of charming heart that'll put you in a good place after watching it.
yeah.
And a lot of modern cinema doesn't really have that authenticity, especially in these type of films.
No, I mean, a lot of modern cinema has gotten commercialized by these big production companies that produce them for a specific outcome in terms of profit. And when they do that, they look at the broadest possible appeal, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
and this was made for kids, not target market. I mean,
yeah,
that's the difference. Now you make a film in that kind of young person's category, and it has to fit a very specific demographic and psychographic. That's the point. Whereas this was just you just made it for kids, just made it for
yeah.
kids to enjoy, just like you made the commitments for music lovers to enjoy to some extent.
I think looking at it today, I can see why some people would probably would find aspects of the film problematic potentially, like in terms of like Jodie Foster's character and the dancing girls maybe, but I don't.
Yeah, quite possibly.
I don't get a sexual vibe from it at all. I mean, there is maybe from Tallulah and the way she interacts with Bugsy. But even then, I don't find anything objectionable there, and I don't
You could
find
get
anything that really objectifies them.
you could maybe take your mind too far with a film like this. I mean,
Yeah,
there is the Tallulah thing, there is the dancing girls, there is Tallulah at the table late on, sat with Fat Sam and Bugsy, and
yeah,
gets told to leave because she's a woman. And there's also, the black kids who are cast as maybe what you'd see as stereotypical roles. The janitor, although Snake Eyes is a gangster, obviously, but then also Leroy is a boxer. They are quite obvious stereotype roles. But again, you're trying to speak to kids. And I think kids understand stereotypes, especially in a film like A Gangster. I don't think any of those are actually being sexist or racist, particularly. It's just part of the identity of the culture of gangsters. Now that's all that is. So I
yeah,
think you could overread it. I think I can see, yeah, I can certainly see some people maybe finding kids playing, gangster moles and dancing girls a little bit on the nose, but it works, and it's not there to be anything other than
I think
fun, represent the genre.
I think it works precisely because they just depict it as if they were adults. I think that's
Yeah,
what makes it work. Um,
yeah. The authenticity, as we said, it's being sincere about its roles. It's not
yeah,
trying to be anything more than that.
because that's something kids really respond to.
Yeah.
Like they don't. It doesn't talk down to kids at all. It meets kids at their level.
Yeah, it treats them like adults and shows them what
Yeah,
being a gangster as a kid could be, which is so, so fun.
yeah, absolutely.
Right, well, I just want to recommend it to people. I said I haven't seen it for about 25 years since I was a teenager, and it brought a huge smile to my face finishing it this afternoon. Like I haven't watched a film which has done that for a little while, and it did it in a way which was just yeah, it made me feel like a kid again, a bit childish,
Yeah,
watching kids throwing pies at each other and pretending to be gangsters and
yeah.
and
We should
dancing
all
around these
celebrate
amazing
our
sets.
inner child every once
Yeah,
in a while.
really, really is
Absolutely.
good. So if you haven't watched it, guys, one of the best kids movies I think ever made. So much fun. Get out there and watch it, and
And
I'll
share it
talk
with
to you
your
in the
kids if you have any.
comments. Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun film for them. It's a fun film for you, and a great choice. Great choice this week. Unexpected. But what it has done is kick me back into gangster mode. So next week I've got a film I love, and I love this whole genre. Studied the 1930s and 40s gangster films when I was a 16-year-old. It's weird though. I went online and just did a bit of top 10, top 100 gangster films, whatever. Many of these classics just aren't on those lists anymore. Goodfellas is number one, and I'd always agree with that. It's one of the best films ever made. Your Godfathers, your Donnie Brasco's. We go on and on and on about the more modern gangster films. But you'd see things like White Heat, maybe. You'd maybe see The Public Enemy from 1931. But apart from that, many of these older films just aren't on those lists.
Yeah.
One of the most important films at that time was The Roaring Twenties. It's 1939, directed by Raoul Walsh, and it stars two of the luminaries of
Oh
the
yeah.
time. Absolutely brilliant actors, and that's Humphrey Bogart and, of course, James Cagney, who
Oh,
was
the ultimate gangster.
the
In his
ultimate gangster.
films, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I'll give you a tiny bit about it for those watching, and that's just that there were two kind of eras of gangster films in that particular period. The gangster films evolved quite quickly. The initial was just in the early 30s. Howard Hawks' Scarface. We had Public Enemy. We had Little Caesar. And then gangsters were seen as like street hoodlums who were just trying to survive, often individuals on a rise to power. And as that decade evolved, we ended up with the culmination of the rise and fall of these individual gangsters. And that's where we saw things like Angels with Dirty Faces and, of course, the Roaring Twenties. After that, then we start dipping into more business-like family mafia, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting time, kind of just after Prohibition America as well. So, Roaring Twenties, that's what we're going to watch next week. A proper old-school gangster film.
It's gonna be great.
It is indeed.
Thanks for watching and or listening, guys. I hope you'll join us for next week and the Roaring Twenties. And take care.
Take it easy, everyone.